Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of City Council. Please attend the call meeting of the City Council to be held in City Council Chamber, 801 Crawford Street, 6 p.m. Monday, March 31st, 2014, for the purpose of a presentation of the proposed operating and capital improvement plan budgets. In addition, you may consider a motion to go into closed meeting by order of the mayor. Mr. Cherry. Here. Mr. Edmonds is absent. Mr. Meeks. Here. Mr. Moody. Here. Ms. Simmons. Here. Ms. Randall. Mayor Wright.
Here.
Mr. Rowe.
Thank you. Thanks, Deborah. Well, this is it. This is our proposed operating budget for the next fiscal year that starts July 1 and ends June 30th, 2015. And before I go any further, I am so blessed. I really am. I want to recognize our awesome budget team, and I'd like for them to stand, please. Don't be shy. I'll have to read your names if you're going to be shy. If you'll, aren't they great? I mean, they have put an awful lot of work. Budget just doesn't start with the new year. We literally start working on the budget once you adopt this budget. We'll be working on the budget for 2015, 2016. And again, I cannot overstate the fact that I am blessed to have such an awesome set of folks, teammates. We spend a lot of time together, and it's not trite to call my colleagues family. Well, I am pleased to make this thing work. There we go. Let me tell you some of the things that we had. We had some very high hurdles that we had to overcome. First, our revenues are flat. You know this from our various budget briefings that we've been giving you over the last couple of months. The impact of the tolls. No one knows exactly. We commissioned the report from Dr. Jim Cook of Old Dominion, and when you do the analysis, Portsmouth is going to be impacted the most of any other Hampton Roads city. In fact, almost 8.5 times more than Virginia Beach. And that's got to have some impact on our revenues, particularly revenues like the meals tax and the sales tax. We also had to deal with increases in our jail per diem at the regional jail, almost $1 million. Increased VRS rates of $1 million. Debt service is going up $1.4 million. And our OPEB, 13.2 if we were to fully fund that. I am pleased to report to you and to the citizens of our community that we have been able to balance this budget again for the second year in a row without any increase in the real estate tax rate, the personal property tax rate, or any increase in our water rates, our wastewater rates, our stormwater rates, or our household waste collection rates. So the budget is balanced without any tax increase at all. Thank you. These, again, my awesome colleagues pulled an awful lot of rabbits out of the hat. And as you'll see, we actually have pared down the general fund budget to do this. The general fund budget, as you see, is going to be smaller than the current year budget. Well, let's get into the details. Budget initiatives. I'm also pleased to report that we have a very bold, citywide recreation initiative in which we're devoting $1 million to start implementing the major themes of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. You had asked me to take a look at that and find a way that we could do this. There are two major themes that come out of that plan. The first is take care of the facilities that we have and upgrade them. The second thing is to partner with the schools and start using our schools truly as a neighborhood center. And get the key word there, neighborhood. And we're marrying up with this budget the concept that a neighborhood is complemented by a good recreation program. The second thing is that we're redirecting some federal funds to invest in our neighborhoods, to address blight, and to bring our neighborhoods up. Big emphasis on neighborhoods, and that's no surprise because this picks up the momentum that we started last year with the creation of the Department of Neighborhood Advancement. We also are reducing our liability under the other post-employment benefits, or what's commonly called OPEB. We're also maintaining the current tax relief program for our seniors and for our disabled homeowners. And we are proposing an increase, again, second year in a row, for not only our employees, our permanent part-time employees, and for our retirees. Now let's look at some of the details. The total budget, $619.2 million, and here are some of the major funds. The general fund operating is $232 million. Utility budget is almost $44 million. And the CIP, and the biggest component in the CIP program is the public utilities, is $72.5. Now here's a breakdown of all the funds, a summary of all the funds, comparing the proposed budget to the current budget. And as I told you, we are reducing, we have pared down the expenses in the general fund budget. It's actually, I'm recommending a budget that's less than the current budget, and a reduction in our other operating funds, such as the utility fund, for a grand total increase of less than 1%. But for our capital improvements program, this year's budget would be less than, or next year's budget would be less than this year's budget. Now, the general fund, of course, is our biggest fund. And we get 81% of our revenue to run our general fund from local taxes. A very small amount comes from other sources, and a pitiful amount, only 17%, comes from the state. And that's not adequate to offset the cost of the mandates that the state puts on us that are unfunded. Now, as far as local revenues, and again, this is no surprise, our biggest source of revenue are our property taxes, our real estate and personal property taxes. Now, where does this money go? 27% of it goes to public safety, and you can go down the list there, and you can see the breakout of where we spend or propose to spend our general fund money. Our fund balance. The new term is unassigned balance of the general fund. And this shows you what the fund balance has been over the past years since fiscal year 2009. And we're projecting that as of June 30th, 2015, we will have a fund balance of $51 million, almost $52 million. And let me show you how that money works for the city. First, you have a policy that 15% of your last year's budget is carried as a fund balance. You need that for emergencies. You need it in order to maintain your bond rating. In fact, the bond rating agencies would want you to go well beyond 15%. Now, this is the amount of money that's above the 15%. And we're projecting that for next year, the amount is $16.8 million. Now, of that, the schools have asked that you reappropriate the sum of $9.5 million. And so you end up with, let me go back to that slide, with a little bit more than $7 million of unassigned fund balance that's above your spending policy. Now, the current year, the year that we're in now, that will expire on 30 June, we cash funded CIP projects to the tune of $4.5 million, and we used $6.2 million for balancing the budget. Let me tell you what we're going to do with this budget that's coming up. We're proposing one-time expenditures of $6.6 million. And we're proposing that we create a debt service fund that goes, a sinking fund that will go for the next 6 fiscal years. If you recall in our briefings during our various work sessions on the upcoming budget, the budget that we're talking about, we told you that our debt service is going to increase over the next 7 years. We tried to find a way to lessen the impact of that on our citizens so that we would not have to raise taxes in order to cover this increase. And we have found a way, which is to create a sinking fund, and this $6.4 million is not being spent this year, but it's being reserved for the next 6 years. Okay? And so what we're doing is taking a portion of our fund balance to cover the future increase in debt service for the next 6 years into the future. Now, as I said, our projected fund balance above the 15% policy is $16.8 million. But that includes the $9.5 million that the schools have requested that you appropriate. And we have pared down our revenue and expense estimates that going forward, it's going to be difficult to generate big increases in the fund balance. What I'm telling you is that we got it really close that revenues equal expenditures. We recommend that you don't have any future drawdowns of the fund balance for the following reason. You only have $7.3 million that's unclaimed. We need to continue to cash fund our capital projects to the greatest extent that we can. We are concerned that if we take it too far, the bond rating agencies will shake their fingers at us and penalize us by reducing our bond rates. We have a good bond rating, and again, there's never enough money in reserve for the bond rating agencies. We don't think that we have put ourselves in jeopardy at all with this plan. In fact, we think that we're positioning ourselves financially in a good position. And we know that we have increases coming in fiscal year 16 and 17, and you'll see this in my budget message because we still have the VRS rates that we have to pay. We're paying a reduced rate. We elected to go with a reduced rate. And over the next 2 years, and you'll see this in my budget message, We know that we're facing increases in our rate that we have to pay the Virginia retirement system. And then lastly, who knows what's going to be around the corner over the horizon as it relates to the economic recovery as we come out of this great recession and the impact of tolls on the city of Portsmouth. Now, I am recommending that we right size, and that's what we've been doing over the last year, our funding level for the schools. And say it just a little bit differently, we need to find the right size for our school budget. Past CAFRs have shown that the city has historically appropriated more funds than what the schools have used, and they have ended up with a surplus of funds. So the issue is the work that lies ahead of us is finding the right size for the school budget and the right size for the funding. This budget proposes that we fund the schools at the same recommended amount that I recommended for the current year, $46 million, plus $1.7 million in capital projects. It also picks up the theme again that we have some grand opportunities here to partner and to save money. We talked in your meeting with the school board about self-insured and combining the health benefit costs of both the city employees and the school employees. And one estimate is $1.6 million can be saved annually. Combining administrative activities. We've already combined our fleet maintenance. As I've said many times, it makes no sense in this building to have 2 payrolls, to have 2 accounts payable, to have 2 accounts receivable, 2 of everything, 2 purchasing agents. All those monies that are saved can go right back into the classroom and be redirected. And we think that there's room for a very significant amount of savings through consolidation. And we have an opportunity. We don't have the luxury of avoiding this opportunity and letting this opportunity slip by. We should act now. I know that you're for this. We're looking to partner with our school board. Now, based on the information that we have, we feel that the $46 million is adequate to support the goals that you want in the way of quality education for the students of Portsmouth. And we're recommending that you continue to appropriate the funds on a categorical basis, but you do so quarterly. And this will allow us to get a quarterly financial report from the schools, and that's one of the recommendations that came out of the grand jury report. So this marries up with the recommendation that we get quarterly reports and you appropriate your funds to the schools on a quarterly basis. And we look forward to working with the new superintendent, whoever that person may be, he or she, to find the right size for the school budget and for your local funding. Now, here's a summary that shows the breakout for our funding for the schools. Again, look at the proposed. We're proposing 47.7 total. 46 million for their general operation, and the CIP 1.7. Remember, with this year's budget, we moved the capital projects from the schools over to the city side, with the goal that we'll fund the projects and we will take care of the bidding of the projects Of course, they would spec the projects. I mean, we're not going to design something that they want to construct, but certainly the funding and the management should be on your side. Now let's go to OPID. Last year, we tackled our most serious financial problem, and that was our woefully underfunded retirement systems, the Portsmouth Supplemental Retirement System and the Portsmouth Police and Fire. If you recall, the equation is very simple. For every dollar's worth of liability that you have in the retirement system, and the liability is the pension that you pay, both now and in the future, you've got to have a dollar's worth of assets. And we were funded at 28 cents on the dollar and 32 cents on the dollar. And any bad day in the market could have put us in the Elizabeth River. I mean, we could have been insolvent. And so you took the bold action to solve that problem with the goal of getting to 80% or 80 cents on the dollar. Now, our OPEB liability is driven by the health insurance cost for our retirees. And this budget works to solve that problem. Our total unfunded liability as it relates to other post-employment benefits is $219 million. Just think about the size of your general fund. Our liability is almost equal to our general fund. And so just like we tackled the pension issue last year, we're tackling OPEB, and we're not going to solve it all in 1 year. We're going to have to take small bites to get there. Our annual required contribution, ARC, if we were to fund at the formula, would require us to put $13.2 million towards OPEB. We think it's a better strategy to address the systemic issue of how we get into this situation. And we got into it because we have a blended rate for all of our people that we pay health insurance for. And that is our active employees, our retirees who are pre-65, what we call the working retirees, and then our post-65. And it is surprising that our biggest liability is not our post-65 retirees, but our pre-65 retirees. And the reason for that is that when you turn 65, you get on Medicare. And you get Medicare Part A and B, and then you get gap insurance. And in many cases, on the open market, the gap insurance probably is cheaper than what we pay, both the employee and the city, for our gap insurance. And so this year we have decoupled, unblended this pool. And so we have 3 buckets. We have active employees, we have the working retirees, and we have the post-65. And this will have a very positive impact on changing our liability as we go forward. This budget proposes that we continue the efforts last year to pay our employees and recognize the hard work that they do, to give them a living wage, a 2% cost of living increase for all employees, including permanent, full-time, effective July 1. We're including funds for constitutional officers and their employees, but we recommend that we wait until the state budget is finalized. You read, like I did, that the governor has recommended a 2% increase for constitutional officers and for state employees. That's still a work in progress, but we have the funds in the budget the non-departmental, but let's wait and see what happens with the state budget. This also recommends a 1% cost of living increase for our retirees, and that's consistent with the provisions of our city code. Now, capital improvements, and there's the list. Again, the biggest effort is in utilities. We continue to fund the replacement of the filter beds at the water treatment plant at Lake Kilby. Streets and drainage, the biggest portion of that $11 million is the funding that we need to put aside next year for the Churchland Bridge. Recreation, our BOLD initiative, over $1 million. Municipal facilities, that covers the stuff that wears out, like a heating, cooling system, roof. And this is a pitiful amount of money when you think about our assets. We're going to undertake a facility study. In fact, we have it, but we're going to update it to make sure that going forward we adequately address deferred maintenance. On the school side, $1 million for the replacement and refurbishing of school buses. And you can read the list. Included in that is the alarm system for Wilson High School. Now here's your budget calendar. As I mentioned to you last year, I want you to be totally comfortable with this budget. So we're going to use all of April and the first half of May to be available to brief you. We're going to give you a presentation, a more detailed presentation on the recreation plan at your next meeting. Again, we want you to be in a situation where you feel totally comfortable that you can vote on the budget on May 13th. Again, I am pleased that for the second year going, that we were able to balance this budget without increasing any of our tax rates, except for one. And that this budget does include a 30-cent increase in the cigarette tax. And that is part of the Healthy Portsmouth initiative. The health departments in the region and the state are making a big effort on trying to change people's habits. And they've asked the local governments to consider going up on the cigarette tax. And this budget does recommend a 30-cent increase on the city cigarette tax. It maintains core municipal services. There are no service levels that are cut except for one. And you'll see this in my budget message. That is, we're recommending that we disband the mounted unit in the police department. We're down to one horse and one rider and the ancillary positions that go with that. With this, we would transfer that sworn officer to another part of the police department. It made sense at one time for us to have that. It doesn't make sense now. With this move, we'll save about a little bit more than $50,000. And we can recycle the stables for a more important use for the police department. So that's one of the service reductions, and really the only one that's obvious. And this shouldn't come as a surprise, because we had talked about this some months ago, that I would look at studying the cost benefit of having the police department, and that was done with Chief Ed Hargis and with the folks in management services. The Bowl Recreation Initiative. We see a real opportunity here to complement what we're doing with our neighborhoods and recreation. That neighborhoods and recreation go hand in glove. And the goal is to come up with a city-wide network of neighborhood centers. And that's for everybody, not just for teenagers, but from the young to the old and everybody in between. What this budget does, and you'll see this in your budget and the budget message, we're going to we propose to reuse the old Churchland Library for recreation. It's been on the market for a good long period of time. There are no takers. We thought, you know what, we have an opportunity here. This can be a center that during the school day, let's say we have some very strong programs for seniors, and then after school for teenagers. It invests in our employees. Remember, when we met a year ago, our employees had been 5 years without an increase. And I can tell you firsthand that these are the best. They're dedicated. They have service on their mind. You call me at all hours on the weekend with an issue, somebody's trash can didn't get picked up, you better believe by the end of the day, we're going to deliver. And I just cannot say enough about how hard they work and how professional they are and how much they care about our community. It continues our commitment to public schools. It maintains our quality service delivery, and it reinvests in our critical infrastructure. And so, there we are. We got 6 weeks to answer questions from both you and the public. Please do not hesitate to call me. Your next work sessions, both on Monday and Tuesday, will devote primarily, if not 100%, to the budget. And again, thank you very much.
Let me first of all thank you, John, and the staff for this presentation and for all the work that you've done thus far. You're right. It doesn't just happen overnight, and it is a process to get to this point. And I want to appreciate and thank all of you that has worked late hours to be able to get us to this point and to try to hold the line and not increase on our taxes. And before we get into other council member questions, I got two, one primarily on the schools, but tell me on the OPEB, the $219 million liability, what are we doing different with the ARC this year than in previous years to be able to tackle that? I see the 13.2 million. What's the differential from previous?
First, we're putting in new rules about how you qualify for OPEB. Before, you could come one day and then retire the next day and be fully able to be part of our OPEB liability. So we've changed that. We now have tenure requirements that you've got to be with the city a given period of time. Second, we have decoupled our health pool as it relates to we had a blended rate. We had our employees that are active. We had our pre-65 retirees and our post-65 retirees. And it's really cheaper, like I said, visualize someone who reaches 65, gets Medicare Part A and Part B, and then gets gap insurance, and they get that gap insurance on the market. They can get it cheaper than what they could get it from us, and we give them a fixed dollar contribution. And see, what we have now is a defined benefits plan. And so it's really hard to determine what the benefits are going to be. So you have to assume the worst case, that a person's going to live more than 75 years or 80 years. And so we're moving to a defined contribution plan. And so what we're doing with this budget is addressing the structure of what caused the problem. And then we'll come back and address how to fund it.
Okay, all right, so that piece will be coming later. All right,
Right.
very good. Now, to the schools. First of all, the school board gave their proposal to us, and I believe, if I'm correct, they asked for about an additional $13 million, which clearly we're not, or you don't show that here. How much consideration did you give to their proposal, and how much dialogue did you have with back and forth on just how much of that we could or could not afford to fund?
Quite a bit of dialogue internally, and again, if you're looking at past history, and past history is a good indicator. You look at the comprehensive annual reports, it's very clear that, and this is using the financial reports that are generated by the schools themselves, that going back more than 8 years, they've generated $92 million worth of surplus funds. We know about the 50, and that goes 5 years. And so the question is, let's match it up. Let's match up what the need is with the funding.
So the $13 million that they're asking for in addition, and we're talking about cutting it, what was it, where's the school piece? Was it $4 million?
I'm sorry.
Go back to the school piece. If
That
you
is
look
the
back
school
up.
piece.
No, where's the 4? I'm sorry. Yeah, the very beginning where you had the bottom line, because the next one is dealing with the general fund. Yeah, there.
All right, remember you gave $1.3 million above my recommendation last year for school teachers, and it was reported to you at the last joint meeting that the school administration has not hired those teachers. So that's part of the $4 million right there. And the other is capital.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay. Well, we want to thank you, sir, again, and staff for your presentation. And how about let's give them a round of applause again. And again, I can't thank you enough for the level of detail, and we're looking forward to more detail in some of these other areas. And I appreciate the setting the workshops aside so we can actually dive into these numbers, because, again, that's where the proof is in the pudding. So with that, thank y'all, and we're adjourned. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.